Yes, job people, this is Michael Shamai representing. I will say, Hail the Lion voice, saying it is time for the lions and the lionesses to tell their own story. King David killed Goliath with a stone, we original dread.
The fittest of the fittest shall survive. But people, open your eyes. Wake up. Blessed love, this is Queen Omega representing for all lions and lionesses. With the lion's voice, we come to tell our story. Ras Tafari, live it. Hey, the lion's voice. Ras Tafari.
Because we must take into consideration that from that early point in time, there were two camps rivaling against each other, which was the Casablanca and the Monrovian. You know, His Majesty under the Moravian, and then you had the Casablanca. However, His Majesty bring forth these two camps together so that there can be a progressive transition towards African unity, And so it is that, from 1950 to the 1960, Kwame Nkrumah started a lot of meetings, and then it go from 58 to 63 when the final meeting of the Organization of African Unity were formed.
The year is 1892, and the land of Ethiopia has been experiencing 4 years of terrible famine and drought. They call it the Kikuken, or the evil days. At least 1/3 of the human population and 90% of the cattle have died. The hyenas have feasted on so many carcasses that they have become overweight and barely able to move. Just when the people could take no more of the evil days, a woman named Wasiro Yeshimabet is giving birth in a place called Ergersa Gora. This is her 9th attempt to bring forth new life. Her previous 8 attempts only resulted in death. Will this child live? Thankfully, a healthy baby boy is born. His first cries are drowned by thunder and lightning flashes across the night sky. The heavens open up and torrential rain starts to fall. Ethiopia's drought is over, and the baby boy is given the name Tafari, meaning one to be feared or respected. Lich Tafari's father, Ras Tafari, is a very important man in 1892 Ethiopia. Although he is overjoyed at the birth of his newborn son, he cannot spend much time with him. Ras Tafari is the governor of Harar and must get back to the famous walled city to deal with its affairs. Furthermore, he is the foreign minister of Ethiopia, and having traveled to different places in Europe, he is very aware of the material and military advances they have made and the looming threats they pose to his country. Ras Tafari knows that the majority of Ethiopians have no idea what is coming, and that he has to work that much harder to secure the realm. Lich Tafari would grow up to become the legendary emperor, Haile Selassie I. To understand his journey, we must first understand the Ethiopia that he was inheriting and what it was like when he was born in 1892. Get your copy of Kwesi Bansu's book, Haile Selassie I, Ethiopia, Volume 1, The Rise of the Priestly Warrior Kings, and increase your knowledge about the history, politics, and culture of Ethiopia in 1892, and how it connects to the rest of African and world history at the time. Haile Selassie I, Ethiopia, Volume 1 is available for purchase at www.bookmanexpress.pub. Please visit for more information.
We're going to talk about the OAU, but we wanted this to be a forward-looking conversation, family. Meaning, what is our vision for Africa united and liberated? Because if we don't know where we're going, how do we attain that goal? We have to have these conversations. Okay, I'm long-winded, so I have to just keep myself. I'm excited, family, because we have some powerhouses. So just Lion Pride, help I to welcome. I'm going to get them to introduce themselves, but this is a power, and this shows the potential of this platform, what we can do, bringing minds from across the seas, over land and sea, to discuss I affairs unapologetically. What a joy. So help I to welcome Lion Pride family, African Liberation Day Lion Voice panel. Please help I to welcome our elder from Trinidad, Bongo, Greece, our Queen Mother, hailing out of Jamaica, currently in the cassava piece, Queen Mother Moses, my legal brother, who is currently in South Africa, Ras Tafari. And then I have my professor, department chair type of person, Dr. Chinzira Mighty, African traveler, Nubian priestess, so much title. Then we have Dr. Walete, who I am very familiar as a Lion Pride member. I always draw for Dr. Walete because the intellect as a librarian, the research, we always learn some facts that we didn't know. So I always have to draw for I sister Lion Pride, again, contributor, Dr. Walete, my traveling partner too. So big up yourself, Dr. Walete. So I'm gonna just begin this conversation. Let us go historical first before we go futuristic. Let's set the bed. For those who are watching from around the world, I'm gonna start with the Bongo Greece, and then we'll just go around. Give us the context, set the framework for this discussion in terms of why is May 25th so important? Why is this African Liberation Day? Why do we gather from the four corners of people of African descent on this day, Bongo Greece?
I, Selassie I, in Ras Tafari, Give thanks to all the esteemed brothers and sisters on the program this afternoon. I greet you with the Iwits of love. As the Swahili word say, Harambe. Today, Rastafari know it's the time of harvest on this occasion of the 61st anniversary of the Organization of African Unity. Today, when we look at the Organization of African Unity, we look at the context of what the organization is and what the organization is not. The Organization of African Unity from its inception in 1963 to now has made quite a lot of significant steps forward. And today, the Rastafari movement, certainly has to be the vanguard of our African liberation movement. As we celebrate it today, as Rastafari, we can no longer remain in our cocoon. When we look at the advancement, there are many Pan-Africanists. Where I come from, a country where the establishment of Marcus Garvey, the teachings and philosophy of Marcus Garvey, came to Trinidad and Tobago in 1919. And by 1920, there were 30 branches of the UNIA, even with Trinidadians having shares in the UNIA. And from there, the Pan-African movement and Pan-Africanists in Trinidad and Tobago became very vocal in terms of the liberation of Africa. Because when you look at the first Pan-African conference by a Trinidadian in London, Sylvester Williams, they made a significant contribution. When you look at the independence and liberation of Ghana under Kwame Nkrumah, you look at Malcolm Nurse, better known as George Padmore, and CLR James. They were both instrumental in the 1958 in setting up the committee that was leading to the organization of the Organization of African Unity. In 1958, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was commissioned again by Haile Selassie for such of the African unity, the integration of African unity, because we must take into consideration that from that early point in time, there were two camps rivaling against each other, which was the Casablanca and the Monrovian. His Majesty under the Moravian, and then you had the Casablanca. However, His Majesty bring forth these two camps together so that there can be a progressive transition towards African unity, you know. And so it is that, you know, from 1950 to the 1960, Kwame Nkrumah started a lot of meetings, and then it go from 58 to 63 when the final meeting of the Organization of African Unity were formed, where even on that particular day, when Brother Kwame launched his book, Africa Must Unite, you know, and there were so many, you know, so many thoughtful introductions into it. I mean, we look at brothers like Signal Leopold. These fellas, although they had certain African consciousness, they were still kind of sell out under France. But however, in coming to as part of the Moravian group, the strategic plan of His Majesty of Haile Selassie was the plan that came out victorious, you know, at the end of the meeting of the Organization of African Unity, in which Brother Kwame Nkrumah fully accepted and, you know, dedicated the work of there. Because when you look at the Organization of African Unity, we take into consideration that the organization was the primary objective of the organization was to really foster and bring unity among states, among the different states, African states. And as such, you know, it was a freely entered agreement. You know, it took years after before, when you look at when you look at what happened in the meeting in terms of the OAU. I mean, I am not a lawyer, but within lawyers would look at the contractual agreement. What is the contractual agreement? How does traditional law come into practice into that whole aspect? Because after a while, a couple of years, you still see where the Leagues of Nations and the United Nations try to bring in certain principles long after the organization had formed pertaining to the assassinations, because we see with the development of the Organization of African Unity taking powerful root, there had been a lot of assassination of most of our brothers.
Well, millions of Africans were stolen and taken in bondage and suffered terrible acts of terrorism. Well, millions of Africans were stolen and taken in bondage and suffered terrible acts of terrorism. Well, it's best that we leave out best, living in this life full of stress. Can't you see the government couldn't care less? Work every day, can't see no progress. So it's best that we leave out the rest, living in this life full of stress. Can't you see the government couldn't care less? Work every day, can't see no progress. See them slave for paychecks. Work every day, grow old from the stress that pays. They're getting cold in the west. Remember we were bought and sold for gold down in the west. I check in my history and I see the sweat from our back to them country. Black people hungry still for the money. Them a robber, them a steal. Funny cause the slave have to face $100 bill for real. Y'all can act like it ain't a big deal, but I got to stand for the black. Color of my skin could have never changed that. No, the slave master thought y'all never talk back, but I must be back. I see them on the war with Iraq, and my people them dying from the ears and crack. They lack basic things that they need, so they chase the Benjamins, living like second class citizens. Time to look within. Haile Selassie, King of Kings, and Ethiopia there from the beginning. Well, ancient memories as it was, miss the soul of the people. So it's best that we leave out the rest, living in this life full of stress. Can't you see the government couldn't care less? Work every day, can't see no progress. So it's best that we leave out the rest, living in this life full of stress. Can't you see the government couldn't care less? Work every day, they still come to a rest.
The shores, beautiful faces, take me to the Niger to behold creation. Look at the lions and tigers. Mother Africa, so majestically attired. Crown from her head to her toe with gold and sapphire, platinum, copper, rubber, and manganese. Try to anciently along the ancient seas. Under the blue now, fall sipping my ancient trees. Bathing in the hot springs, putting the structure at ease. Life is hell in the west, it's full time we all leave. $10 for a spliff, what's this?